Okay, right, we're recording now.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting for the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force on the 14th of March 2022 at the South Essex College. We're going to go straight into the agenda and ask for any apologies for absence.
Yeah, we've had apologies from Councillor Muldowney, Councillor Chaput, Councillor Carter, Councillor Kent, Peter Ward, Weston Mercer, and Chris Stratford.
Thank you. Any other apologies? No? Okay, that's everyone accounted for and apologies sent. Agenda item 2, the minutes, found on pages 5 and 10. Move that these be approved at the minutes in that meeting. Second that. Second. Any comments on the actual minutes? No. No. Okay. Urgent items of urgent business. I've not agreed this evening to any items of urgent business. Item 4, declaration of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? No, those around the room. No, those online. Thank you. Okay, moving into the agenda items then, we've got a couple of items today with further updates. There is also an update that's got some paperwork behind it that's come through this week, which is on the council website. If we go in order, we'll start with number 5. I'm going to hand over to Colin Black for a top A13 construction update.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'll just share my screen, so bear with me for 2 moments while I sort the technology.
I've just turned the lights off so we can see the screen better in here.
Right. Tell me when you can see me.
Yep, we can see you.
Great. So I'd like to give you a bit of an update today, not just on sort of Orsic Cock Junction, but on some of the work that we have been doing to try and better understand the impact on a number of junctions, including Orsic Cock. And the overall presentation that the overall theme that we have been trying to unpick with National Highways has been the interrelationship between the different junctions and the new proposed LTC junction. So obviously Orsic Cock roundabout is a very key junction in the middle of LTC. And a number of the routings, due to the reconfiguration since the last consultation of the link with the A13 and LTC, mean that some of the traffic that was supposed to be going up to Manor Way is likely to be turning at Orsic Cock. Now, I mean, obviously there's some logic to traffic not having to go so far, but the key issue we've consistently been raising with National Highways is whether these junctions can actually cope with the traffic that's likely to be generated by this scheme. Now, we do know this scheme's likely to generate a significant increase in traffic across the local area. We've spent a lot of money upgrading the A13 and the Orsic Cock roundabout. So our plea to National Highways was, please, before you propose the junction, before you bring forward this to DCO, the least you could do is just check that some of these key junctions on the network work with your model. And it's interesting to note that this hasn't previously been done at an operational level. There's 2 types of model. There's a strategic model, which is looking at the overall picture. And then there's the operational models, which look at how specific parts of the network work in more detail. So we are currently working with them on Orsett-Cock roundabout and Daneholes roundabout. But there are a number of other junctions and other areas of concern that we have asked for further modelling and are waiting for National Highways to provide us an update of when they hope to provide us with that modelling data. We have also suggested to National Highways that it would help them and help us if we could have access to the LTAM model, the Lower Thames Crossing model, so we can run our own models. At the moment, we have to ask them very specifically what we would like and then wait a number of months for that data to come back. And then we'll invariably have a whole host of questions about that data. And it's a really time-consuming process. So we have written to National Highways a number of times in collaboration with Essex County Council, who also would like access to the model, to just ask for better access so that we can run these and start to better understand the impact of traffic on our network. It is a bit of a concern that the modelling takes quite such a long time to come forward. So there, not only are these key junctions of significant concern to us, but the model has also highlighted some areas of increased traffic percolating through residential areas. As we know, Orsett and Horndon have suffered during the A13 upgrade. We have also identified in Chadwell St Mary and Corringham impacts of displaced traffic, rat running traffic, call it what you want. There's more traffic after LTC opens. And our real concern has been that these sorts of impacts should be picked up by their transport assessment. And in the last DCO version 1 that they were going to submit, these weren't picked up and identified in their transport assessment. So this is one of the reasons why we would really like to have access to their model, because we're concerned that they're missing stuff, and if they miss stuff and we've missed stuff, we're the ones at Thurrock Council will have to pick up and deal with the issues in the 2030s when they start to materialise. So Orsett-Cock specifically is going to form part of the wider LTC A13 A1089 interchange. As I think we've mentioned previously, LTC results in quite significant traffic flow increases on the A13 to the east of LTC, with traffic coming down. We don't quite know where it's coming from. We can't see the model. We can only see to the extent of our cordon. That's what we've been allowed to see. But we believe that a significant amount of traffic is coming down sort of Chelmsford Southend way and being pulled through the A13. Now, with LTC, the total traffic at Orsett-Cock junction is expected to increase significantly by around 15% in the AM peak and 24% in the PM peak. So what we have agreed with National Highways is some micro simulation modelling on a platform called Vism to fully assess the impacts and develop proposals to improve the junction. What we have asked is that future operation and improvements need to consider the future local growth aspirations. So this is one of the challenges of bringing forward this and modelling this junction. It's pretty key, it's pretty vital access point across Thurrock. And as we're looking to put more development into Thurrock as part of the local plan, we don't know how much capacity there is left in that key junction. We also don't know what will happen to that junction if we decide we wanted to improve the ability for cyclists to get across at that junction, or it became a key part of our public transport corridor, and we wanted to provide some bus priority across there. So if it's barely hanging on and it's working right on its limits from opening, it really limits our opportunities to do anything. So A, we don't even know whether it works, but B, we want to know what we can do with it in terms of the local plan, what opportunities there might be to potentially reallocate road space at a later stage. What we don't want to do is be stuck with a real blocker in terms of access across Thurrock and have to spend millions on providing an upgraded junction at a later stage. We're also really concerned that Alsip Cock is, again, will open fully spring this year, and then in potentially 2030, so 7 years time, 7-8 years time, in 2 years time it could then start to face a number of temporary closures and significant disruption again. So only have a 2-year window of being able to have the benefits of A13 before we engage in LTC starts to engage in our whole process of reconstructing that part of the network with no doubt temporary speed limits and diversions. So it's going to be only a 2-year window potentially where we won't have any disruption on the A13. And I know from the letters that we have from the public that people are pretty fed up and don't want that disruption. So we're looking again at kind of trying to understand from the construction strategy and the construction modelling what disruption is being predicted, and we don't yet have that granularity to be able to answer the questions that rightly residents are asking us. So I don't know whether you can see those maps particularly well, but the one at the top just shows a reconfigured Alsip Cock junction. Well, not the junction, the roads that lead to the west from the junction allows you to go around the junction and get back onto the 1089 from Alsip Cock. And you can see from the diagram at the bottom the predicted changes in flow anticipated in the morning peak with Lower Thames crossing. Manor Way equally is really critical for the expansion of London Gateway, and we before last down at London Gateway and looking at the amazing potential for growth at the port there, and DP World. The Manor Way currently operates within capacity following some improvement works by London Gateway DP World, but traffic levels are forecast to again increase significantly with LTC, and there is a risk that the Manor Way junction will be used as an alternative route to avoid Alsip Cock junction, because what we don't know, even though you can turn at Alsip Cock, well, you're not going to sit in a traffic jam at Alsip Cock waiting to go round when you think actually my sat nav's telling me it's quicker to nip up to Manor Way and come back down again. So it could still depend. This is discussions we're having with National Highways. Until you understand what's really going on at Alsip Cock, you can't say that the issues at Manor Way are going to just disappear. because the two junctions are linked. So we're working and encouraging National Highways to develop a linked strategic, a linked model, microsimulation model to bring those junctions together and better understand what's going on. There is also the added bit of confusion that we don't actually know where the limits of National Highways strategic road network will end and what remains as local highway. There's been a lot of talk about potentially trunking the A13 up to Manaway, and I think London Gateway is one of the only ports in the UK that's not connected to a strategic road network. And so there's logic in bringing the National Highways network up to Manaway and connect with London Gateway. But we haven't moved further forward yet, and I think there's some quite gnarly issues for us to address with regards to who's responsible for which bit of the network and where. Are we going to be left with an Orsic cock that's got no capacity and it's Thurrock Council's responsibility to maintain? So I think there's some really key questions that we're asking National Highways, and it's sometimes a bit of a surprise that these questions haven't been asked previously, or they haven't thought it's appropriate to really provide that detail. So the junction improvements at Manaway have not yet been considered by National Highways, although we understand that some micro-simulation traffic modelling is due to take place. It does take a bit of to and fro to pin down the actual deliverable dates for promised modelling. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, Corringham, we've identified some substantive increase on traffic flow on the B14220 and the South End Road. And we understand that the rerouting is due to delay at the Five Bells Junction, the A13, A176, and that then makes traffic pass through residential areas not appropriate for an increase in traffic. We think it's related to the fact of lack of capacity at Manaway. What we're asking National Highways to do is identify it, make sure it's in their transport assessment, make sure that they are dealing with it as an impact of Lower Thames crossing. Now there is a bit of a grey area as to the extent to which National Highways are responsible for wider traffic impacts, and I understand that Black Cat scheme, the local authority there have some very significant concerns about the wider traffic impacts of that scheme, and that's currently being deliberated at examination, and we shall know in a few months' time as to whether National Highways will need to take consideration or more consideration of wider network impacts. I understand it's becoming a bit of a test case as to what should happen. Now, with Manaway, all we can do is keep asking the questions and keep looking and keep asking for more details and more data. Now we've identified this traffic rerouting. There is an issue at Manaway. We need National Highways to instruct their team to look into it and come up with a programme of work to deal with it. Now I think it's very much related to Orsic Cock, and we are really concerned about the potential to restrict our ability to bring forward the Freeport's potential because of impacts of Lower Thames crossing on the A13, Orsic Cock Manaway in particular. So just to perhaps summarise, I'm sure there's lots of burning questions. The LTC scheme utilises local roads and junctions. So A13 east of the 1089 is operated and maintained by Thurrock Council. At the A1089 down to the Port of Tilbury is Strategic Road Network, it's National Highways Network. So they have a duty to address junctions such as Asda Roundabout, as they are custodians of that part of the network. Now we are responsible for Orsett Cock and the A13 and Manor Way and down to DP World. So what we don't want to happen is to end up with a legacy that we're having to deal with no cash to address it, and having to go jump through lots of hoops for funding when we know that there's going to be a real issue from the get-go. Our real concern is that we know these issues are there and they should therefore be addressed as part of the scheme and not just be batted into the long grass for us to deal with at a later stage. We do know that LTC impacts on critical local junctions such as Orsett Cock, Manor Way, and we are really concerned that LTC uses local road capacity, and because in many ways it's a cheaper scheme because it's using our road capacity rather than having to create new road capacity to allow the LTC scheme to work effectively. So it's going to deliver on an impact on our ability to deliver local economic growth aspirations such as Thames Freeport and our local plan. And at some stage we're going to need to understand kind of what government priorities are. Is it moving quantums of traffic, or is it bringing forward Freeport, the economic regeneration and housing and sustainable local growth as part of the local plan? So we are very concerned that Orsett Cock and many junctions across Thurrock are going to face a number of temporary closures and significant disruption during the construction of LTC. Local communities will be severely impacted by traffic rerouting during these periods of disruption, and I know personally from the work on the A13 just how difficult it is and how limited you are as a highways authority to really address that traffic rerouting. It takes a lot of work to try and work out what you need to do in which circumstances. So it's our ask that National Highways must really properly and fully assess the impact on local junctions and commit to those junction improvements where necessary, or environmental traffic calming schemes in local villages such as Orsett. Now, it's not just about putting a few humps and cameras up. I think that's a really clunky and traffic engineering approach to this issue. What we really would need to do is fundamentally change the nature of the road through some of those villages. So it did not feel appropriate to cater for diverted HGVs or significant quantums of traffic. So there will be a bit of discussion with National Highways about what sort of mitigation is appropriate. And no doubt there will be a discussion as to what's already there and the issues that are already there and what they're going to create. So there's a long way to go, and not an awful lot of time before they're likely to submit their DCO. And so we are encouraging them to just reflect on their customer engagement strategy. Now, National Highways have published a very demanding, very honourable customer engagement strategy that really sets out their stall as to what they expect to do. And we think let's just say we're looking for some clarifications of that detail, particularly during the construction period, so that we can, as part of being the greenest scheme construction scheme in the UK, they should be delivering an exemplar customer engagement strategy, and we're still waiting for details of that. Just thought you might have questions about the junction, so we put a pretty map in there at the very end, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview and update, and open it up to questions.
Thank you, Colin. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some questions from around the room, and I see Laura's already got a hand up as well. One quick one from me, just to kick off the questions. The Manaway trunking, or the road network, who was ultimately responsible for that decision?
That will be DFT decision. So DFT, so National Highways are an executive agency working for DFT. So there is a process, but we've been engaging in that process and providing a lot of data over the last year or so.
Yeah, thank you. Laura, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Colin, for the presentation. As you're aware, but just for the benefit of anyone else listening, obviously I did send a lot of feedback and questions through via email, which you kindly already addressed. But just a couple of points on the presentation. On the map that shows the Alsip traffic flow, I've noticed time and time again when they provided these that the colouring on there changes drastically in places where there are actually there's no explanation. There's no junction to explain why it suddenly jumps up or drops down. So I don't know if that can sort of either be explained or looked into, maybe not right now, but just moving forward.
Yeah, so we don't always get that narrative ourselves, Laura, and it's sometimes quite difficult for us to work out what's going on. And this is where we've really encouraging National Highways to be a bit more open with their model, because if they could provide that model to us, we can get a better understanding of what's actually going on there. And all we can do is ask them questions, and when they've got a million and one other questions they're trying to answer as well, it often gets batted to the back of the list.
Thank you. I have got others, but Chair, I'll pass back to you and wait my turn for another go. Thanks.
The percentage of people leaving the morning, 15%, 24% coming back from the evening. I think it'd be more closer together than 15 and 24. So that means more people coming in, less and out. That's a bit confusing.
So it largely, we're going to get technical now. So it largely depends on the profile of the peak. So some peaks are spread over a longer period, some are more pronounced, some conflict with school traffic, some don't. So the peak on the strategic road network is 8 till 9, 7 till 8, and the peak on the local network is 8 till 9. So we've asked National Highways to look at the 8 till 9 peak for Alsip, for example, and we found that there are some quite significant differences in what they were modelling and what we think they should be modelling.
Laura? Come back round to you.
Thank you. Just kind of following on from that a little, really. When you're talking about these peak times for the traffic flowing, I think bearing in mind we're talking about the Alsip, the Manaway, sort of Stamford Junction, and the 1089. Surely those peak traffic times vary to the standard anyway, because of the fact that you're working on a shift system with the ports, which means that when the staff are changing over and you've got the traffic for the port and everything as well, that would vary considerably, I would have thought, from the generalisation of what peak hour traffic.
That's a really important point, Laura. And as we know, I think we all expect an awful lot from traffic models. We expect them to be very scientific, but all they are doing is providing a generalized understanding of the likely potential impacts at certain times. They don't take into account every scenario, and they don't that they can differ quite significantly to the actual outturn traffic impacts. So our concern is if there's very little contingency in that it doesn't necessarily account for the unexpected. And so, for example, you also seen some of the studies that looked at the widening of, is it junction 14, 15 of the M25 round by Heathrow, and sort of the other side, and the estimate of induced traffic, people who used a bit of the network because they can, and some of the research suggested that it was significantly higher than that which was put into the traffic model. Now we're concerned that might actually happen here, but there's no easy way of understanding that level of impact. But what we do know is that kind of the less resilience there is in the model, the more likely it is, the less likely the model shows resilience in the network, the more likely it is that there will be frequent issues of traffic congestion and impacts on the local road network.
And are these figures that they're running actually with the predicted figures for the ports? Because obviously we know there's going to be a lot of extra growth.
So what they are doing is running what they call sensitivity tests. So they will run a number of scenarios against those models. They are currently updating their models. So we've only got older data at the moment. We are told that they are updating and they're going to rerun their models. We should start being able to see some of the outputs from that. I think that there's a program of outputs and model validation and reviews that we're currently discussing with National Highways that runs up until June. That's just how long it takes to do this modelling. Now, we want sufficient time once we've got that modelling data to be able to review it, ask further questions, and come to agreement on the impacts before they submit any DCO.
Chair, can I just come back with one more quick, and then I promise I'll let someone else in. Just to say on that, obviously, yes, you guys need that, but surely we, the public, deserve to have that as well and to be consulted on it, because the difference in this traffic modelling and the way it's going to impact these junctions and the whole of Thurrock is something that surely we have a right to be consulted on, rather than just have to be waiting until DCO and then trying to debate it then.
So these are questions that we regularly discuss with National Highways, and I think their current line is that because there's unless there's significant difference in the modelling to the modelling that they've already done and already consulted on, that they don't need to reconsult on any updated modelling.
Okay. I'm not going to shoot the messenger. I appreciate you're only sharing what they're saying. Thank you.
Well, question from Mr. Robert Quick.
Colin, one of the things that disappoints me on this traffic impact side of you is that it appears, looking from the diagram, that you haven't included East Tilbury, and as we've seen from the recent work on J13, with all the closures there, the impact builds back down to those areas very rapidly. Weekend after weekend, night after night, of traffic problems. That's down East Tilbury Road, Buckingham Hill Road. That's it's impacted by the railway crossing at East Tilbury, and what I can see from the way the COP is planning to go with this road scheme is that that's going to be even worse in that area. Definitely needs to be included in traffic impact assessment.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was included in the last traffic impact assessment, but I can certainly ask the team to take a look and to better understand the impacts on the roads leading down to East Tilbury. There'll be a lot of
the prime usage there of those roadways by the construction vehicles.
yes, yeah, to the compounds down there.
Colin, just a question just while we're talking about modelling. I think I'm right in saying that until a DCO is submitted for anything that could happen on the Swanscombe Peninsula, that none of the traffic modelling for whatever happens there, whatever scheme or development is considered, is actually taken into consideration by National Highways until the Swanscombe Peninsula DCO is submitted. I suppose the main question is, if the Swanscombe Peninsula, say the LTC put their DCO in, and then during the planning, like say 3 months later, the DCO for the Swanscombe Peninsula project, that for want of a better word, then goes in, would that then be taken into consideration in the planning? The traffic modelling and the extra cars that could come from whatever happens in Swanscombe?
So if London Resort, which I presume that's what you're referring to, is approved, then it will be a material consideration. The traffic impacts of that will be material consideration that LTC modelling will need to take into account for. But at the moment, it's quite. I understand that they are reviewing the impacts of London Resort through sensitivity testing, rather than including it as part of the core model assumptions. I mean, it's you can appreciate there's a lot of uncertainty around London Resort, so it's very difficult to know, and you do wonder whether car park at Tilbury is the best use of land there going forward. But I mean, this is all speculation, and until we've got some clearer idea of when, where, and how London Resort's coming forward, it's very difficult to incorporate it into and take realistic consideration of it in the modelling.
Thank you, Colin. I mean, would that be a similar scenario for, say, Bradwell B, which would be another DCO up on the Essex coast?
How do you mean, sorry, with regards to LTC?
Yeah, would if Bradwell B suddenly, do we take, because obviously some numbers of vehicles are going to use the A13 to get to Bradwell, I would have thought in some ways. But would that be taken into consideration?
So what will, in the modelling, there is they're called tempo growth figures. So there is a part of the modelling has to take into account the a DFT approved background increase in traffic modelling, which is given to National Highways by DFT's modelling team to say this number should account for the background growth in traffic. Now, that's a rather generalised approach, and obviously when you start to look at specific junctions, that's when kind of sort of the weaknesses in that approach start to become apparent. So things like growth and local plan growth should be taken into account for in the growth figures that are applied to the traffic modelling. But when it becomes more of an issue is specific developments close to junctions that are fairly critical for a strategic scheme.
Okay, thank you. I just worry because on one hand we're saying it's already looking like it's not going to be up to the job, and then we're considering other DCOs in and around the area that could push figures way above what DFT are predicting. I'll let Laura come in, please.
Thanks. Really more of a couple of quick statements rather than questions. Firstly, I think it's important that we all remember that this is under normal operations and doesn't even take into account what happens in the craziness of when there are incidents if all this goes ahead. And secondly, I don't think it's just coming down to the cost and the inconvenience. I think this just goes to prove that this is the wrong project in the wrong location, full stop, because they're utilising our local roads because they can't incorporate the junctions adequately that they need into the space that's left around it, what we've got here. And I think it just strengthens the case that this is the wrong crossing in the wrong location.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Laura, all we can do is make planning arguments that highlight some concerns we have in the planning process, but there is obviously an overarching of public perception and political narrative that we're most aware of.
Just
Robert, quick.
Just a statement. It appears that national highways are bringing a lot of these pieces of work that you and we are saying are needed to reduce the impact on the local area by keeping the costs of construction of this artificially down. Really, to do everything that's required, they need to spend a lot more money to do because they won't get permission.
Yeah, I mean, that it is one of our concerns that in order to be the greenest project, construction project in the UK, that they will need to spend more money than DFT have currently budgeted for. And we think it's going to be a challenge to do it within the current cost envelope. And if they can't deliver the scheme within the current cost envelope and still be the greenest project in the construction project in the UK, it will trigger concern from Treasury to look at the value for money of the scheme. But that's something that's completely out of our control. All we can ask is everybody confident that this still represents good value for money? I think from a number of local perspectives, it's looking more and more questionable, but we don't have access to the data that the applicants do.
Councillor Burton.
Nothing, well, slightly to do with this, but at Alsip Cop, we have a football team called, this is one ideas really, or help. Alsip Cop, they have a football team called Alsip Royals, which LTC of Highways England have bought their land, so they've put out, they're taking their kids, 80 kids that can't play football. Basically now, a lot of work with officers, and we found them a pitch in Corringham, found them changing rooms in Corringham, found space for storage, but they need money now because they've been playing at home. They've got to invest into another pitch and money. They need to buy goals and fences, etc. Is there any way that we could give Highways England a nudge to fund that or some of it? Is there a way we can get money out of them to help another 80 kids play football? Otherwise, they're struggling.
So I think absolutely this is the sort of thing that we can engage them and ask them for clarification on whether there'll be any funding available. If you want to encourage them to drop us a line and ask them with their request, we're quite happy to position that with the relevant people at LTC team.
And that's you.
Yeah, me and Chris Stratford.
Laura, have you got any final questions?
No, I think I'll leave it there and I'll email if I've got anything else. Thank you.
Well, just to finish, was it, just so I heard it correctly, the black hat scheme you mentioned?
Cat,
Hat.
as in meow.
Thank you. I look at that. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, one last question, one quick.
Sorry, Chris. Just reflecting back on one of the projects that National Highways told us was going ahead, whether or not DCO approved for this Thames crossing. That was the eastbound exit from Lakeside into the A13. That seems to have completely disappeared from any paperwork. Do you know any more about that?
We are still progressing. That's where the Thurrock Highways team are still progressing that scheme with National Highways, looking at acceptability of different design configurations. It's quite a constrained site, and trying to work out what the options are there within the funding envelope that DFT have proposed. So work's ongoing, so it hasn't gone away.
Did wonder whether they could use part of the compound opposite Sainsbury's that they're commandeered to give them access to leave and perhaps they wanted to.
Yes, a lot of detail. I'm not aware of all the specific arrangements that they're focused on. Chris is the man with the forensic knowledge of this sort of detail.
Thanks, man.
But if you've got a specific question you want me to raise and come back to you on, more than happy to do so.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Colin. I think it's fair to say that the task force are quite concerned about things like the Orset Cock and the Manaway junctions and the impacts it can have on the local roads. And the council shares those concerns, and I hope you can get some of your wish list, so to speak, agreed with before the DCO.
Yeah, well, we'll continue to request the modelling, and we've been promised that we will get the full model to look at, and we'll be able to agree the model for this junction. And I think that's a great step forward. That we've been promised that we will actually have the model and be able to see how the model's been set up and agree the model, and we will be able to agree that with both parties. So we'll have a very open and honest understanding of what Orset looks like. And of course, what we would really like to know is kind of, well, could you potentially relieve Orset by putting a junction at Tilbury and taking traffic off LTC that doesn't need to go down the 1089, that goes straight into the port. Be interesting to know.
I think that'll be something for a future meeting. So going to move on to item number 6, which is a National Highways consultation verbal update. Allow you to start on that one, Colin.
Okay, so from what I understand from National Highways is that they're currently reviewing their options and are likely to make an announcement as to whether the consultation will go ahead as publicised. They will have to make that announcement this week, I presume.
So it was due to start on the 23rd of March. So let's look, 10 days, 9 days away. Personally, I have some doubts whether they're ready to go for this in 9 days' time. We normally would see a lot more ramping up and an announcement of things. I'm not sure if any other members of the task force have got any thoughts on this.
So we cancelled the whole and they paid for it, and they said they're definitely not having it, so. Not pretty The only other thing is, I offered them the 30th of May and they said they don't work when there's a bank holiday time. They pick and choose when they want to work, but if there's an holiday, a public holiday, and they don't work. So I don't know, I've offered them dates and they said they don't like to work. They're definitely cancelled. One that I had.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Laura, do you have any questions regarding this before we go deeper into everything consultation related?
No, I think we need to know what's going on, but if there's no answer from them, then we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
So disregarding the date of when it's going to happen, what sort of things can we expect to see in this consultation?
So they're calling it a refinements consultation. We have suggested to National Highways that it is more than just local refinements, and that is perhaps a bit misleading, and it actually includes a lot more than just some small refinements. And actually there's a lot more that people would like to know as part of that. So, for example, there's a lot of questions that were raised in the last consultation that people would like to know how the scheme has responded to their concerns in the last consultation, preferably before they're consulted again on further refinements or changes, as might be more appropriate.
And compared to various refinements / changes that we've seen from National Highways previously, are we likely to see anything bigger or smaller, or is it all going to be literally say refinement going down in scale rather than anything big being announced?
Yeah, I think it's predominantly intended to capture the changes around Tilbury Fields and what they're proposing to do in order to facilitate the Freeport at Tilbury coming forward. I think about a third of the Freeport land was allocated for spoil deposition on Tilbury Fields. They've had to go back and work out what they're going to do with that spoil, and also capturing the changes to Orsicock Junction, the A13 LTC configuration, and the justification for that and the implications of that. But we would like to see them consult much more widely on construction traffic, on updated modelling, and obviously health and equalities impact.
Question for Robert Quick.
Colin, just help me understand, I'm not sure my memory, but I understood that one of the reasons why the DCO was withdrawn was because of, say, incomplete involvement discussion with local people, patients that are impacted by it. Surely this this consultation should have something in it if residents are supposed to give that feedback, make it all with their plans. Recent consultations, the recent meetings they had, invited people in to see how changes being made to paths.
So you're breaking up quite a bit. I think I get the gist of the question, which is have they met the threshold necessary to claim that this is now an appropriate level of consultation in community and addressing community impacts. The team at Thurrock still have some real reservations that they've met that threshold, and we've still got a lot of questions. I know that they have the National Highways team at LTC have taken a lot of time to categorise all of the outstanding issues, and I know that they have a few hundred still remaining in the highest classification of issues, and we think that the majority of those should really be addressed before going out to consultation, so at least people have a scheme that they are fully understand how National Highways intend to address the key issues that have been raised repeatedly over several years now. But at the end of the day, the decision's not ours, it's up to the planning inspectorate.
Thanks, Colin. You put my question much better than I was trying.
No worries.
I don't think we've got any further questions on this one. Colin, when it originally went on the agenda, we didn't know exactly where things were going to be or if Highways England were going to be in attendance. But I suppose just to say, going forward, when a consultation doesn't become likely, then that invitation for Highways England to attend the task force meeting is still there.
Yep, hopefully we can all meet in person.
That'd be great. Excellent. Brilliant, thank you for that. Moving on to item 7, health impact assessment verbal update. I think I know what you're going to say, Colin, but over to you.
Well, the verbal update, big drum roll, is that there's no update. I mean, we are continuing to press them on on various aspects of the health and equalities impact assessment, but progress is slow.
I think when I had a report to Cabinet last week, I did make it clear how frustrated the task force and yourself is with things like the health impact assessment and baseline data and things like that. So yes, it is no, and yes, hopefully we'll have some information forthcoming in future meetings.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of largely out of our hands. The last SIPHAG meeting was held on the 27th of January, and a further meeting is being arranged for late March, but the agenda's not yet been published.
Thank you. So if there's any questions on this one inside the room, just looking to see if Laura. No.
Councillor Muldowney would be surprised.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. Go now on to item 8, the work programme. Of course, there's only 1 month left in April, and we'll wait and see what happens with that. Then I guess when task force meets, it might be the new membership or decided once the elections are done, things like that in May.
I'll still be in it.
So unless anyone's got anything else to add, just looking around, from Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, not to do with the work programme, but just to give you a quick update as well, if you don't mind. I've mentioned before that TCAG have called on government to pause the smart Lower Thames crossing or smart motorway by stealth. We have actually sent our evidence report off to all the various parties again on that. And then today we have actually also emailed the Secretary of State Grant to call him to reopen RIS2. Obviously, that includes the LTC, and that is on the basis that National Highways have a licence. And in that licence, if there are any major variations to things, they should reopen the RIS2 for review. And we're calling on that and providing evidence of things we feel are major variations. We're not alone. Transport Action Network have done similar. One of the things that we noted is in the National Highways Annual Report 2021, National Highways actually consider the failure to progress the lower Thames crossing as an extreme and likely risk and even an excess threat to national highways. So I hope that Mr. Shapps will actually give that some proper attention and consideration and review it.
Place of work.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's Laura Blake from the Thames Crossing Action Group. Thank you for that, and that information is useful to the other task force members. Thank you. Oh, no, it's all right. We thought you locked up then. So thank you very much, Laura, for that. And with that, then the time is 7:05 PM, and I'll close the meeting of the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks, Colin.
Cheers. Thanks both. Take care. Have a nice evening. Bye. Bye.
Bye.